Good afternoon and welcome to World Mission Today's September webinar. My name is Christine Coy-Four and I work in the Office of Equipping for Mission Involvement here in Presbyterian World Mission. Today we are excited to have a webinar about our education efforts happening around the world and here in the U.S. And before we get started with that, I just want to share a couple technical instructions for this webinar that will help you as you participate. First, I want to let you know about the process of submitting questions. So, Frank, if you can go to the next slide, you'll see an image that you should have on your screen, on the right-hand side of your screen. This is a box, and you can type in any questions that you might have throughout today's webinar. We would love to have a lot of questions for our question and answer portion of the webinar later on. So please, as you hear this presentation, submit questions to us and we'll be sure to respond to them later on in the process. Also, if you have any problems throughout the webinar, if you're having difficulty hearing or anything like that, type in to that box any of those issues and we'll try to address them throughout the webinar. I want to let you know that this webinar is being recorded, and if you go to the World Mission Today website, you'll be able to find a recording of today's webinar. We should be able to have it up in the next day. So please check back here and know that you can listen to this. If you want to listen to it with your mission committee at your church or any group that it might be helpful to have another listen through, it'll be available on this website. Finally, just so you know, this webinar is part of the Ministry of Equipping for Mission Involvement in World Mission, and we offer a lot of resources for your individual and congregational and presbytery-wide mission involvement. On this website, our Mission Resources website, you can find resources on a variety of topics, from organizing your mission committee to curriculum resources available in mission, to tools for planning a really great mission trip, short-term mission trip, best practices and tools. We hope that you'll check out this page and just see all of the resources that are there for you. So we want to get started, and I just want to let you know some of the really great people that we have on today's webinar. Our host for today's webinar is Frank Dimmick. Frank has served for 30 years as a mission co-worker with the Presbyterian Church. He has served in the Democratic Republic of Congo, in Malawi, and in Lesotho. And in March of 2013, Frank was appointed to serve as the Global Poverty Alleviation Catalyst for World Mission. And since then, he has been going around the country helping to organize a campaign to transform quality education around the world. And so we're really excited to hear all that he has to share today. We also have with us Alonzo Johnson. Alonzo works in the peacemaking program here in the Presbyterian Mission Agency. He is a former pastor of Oak Lane Presbyterian Church in Philadelphia and has 15 years of experience working with young people in urban ministry. He's currently working as the mission associate for peacemaking and the convener of the EAC initiative Domestic. So he'll tell you a bit about the domestic side of this campaign. And finally, we want to welcome Judy Nebrig. Judy is a teacher and clinical social worker who has served on Western North Carolina's Presbytery leadership team for their partnership in Guatemala. And so she's going to tell us a bit about how this education campaign has been working at her presbytery level. So we're really grateful to have this rich group of people with us for today's webinar. Please continue to write your questions, your comments, and we'll be sure to get to those at the end of the webinar. But now I'm going to turn it over to Frank.
Thank you, Christine, and thank you everyone for joining this webinar on quality education. I'd like to open this presentation with a brief prayer. So would you please pray with me? Loving God, we are honored and blessed that you are with us and know us. We pray for your children in need everywhere, for their safety, health, education, and basic needs. And we pray for wisdom and energy to use the gifts and the talents that you've given to each of us to be involved in the care of those who are most vulnerable and for the development of children. We ask that you open our hearts, our eyes, and our ears to how we might best respond to the many challenges before us. And it's in Jesus' name that we pray. Amen. Well, poverty is one of the critical global issues that was identified by Presbyterians nearly 3 years ago at a World Mission consultation in Dallas, Texas. At that meeting, participants were challenged to work together to achieve a collective impact for God's mission in each of 3 areas. In addition to alleviating poverty, catalysts were recruited to network U.S. Presbyterians and co-workers and church partners in some of the 40 countries that we work with globally. And the initial campaigns were identified to address each of the critical global issues. I'm pleased to introduce my colleagues Juan Sarmiento in evangelism and Shannon Beck in the violence and reconciliation area, and their campaigns to train leaders for community transformation and to stop sexual violence, respectively. I encourage you to learn more about their campaigns, like their Facebook pages and read their blogs, and visit peaceusa.org/worldmission to learn more about each of their campaigns. In this webinar, we will focus on the Poverty Alleviation Campaign, which is to address the root causes of poverty, especially as they impact the lives of women and children. And that campaign is to strengthen quality education for 1 million children, both globally and domestically. On September 25th, in just about 2 weeks, or 3 weeks, world leaders will gather at the United Nations to endorse the next set of ambitious goals to eradicate poverty globally and to promote sustainable development. Poverty is multidimensional, it's intergenerational, and it's everywhere. It's sometimes defined as a lack of personal freedom or opportunity. And as you can see in this diagram, there are very complex interrelationships between the poverty and vulnerability related issues. So reducing poverty is part of who we are as Presbyterians. So why select quality education as our campaign? Well, Presbyterians in this country and around the world have been passionately involved in education for more than a century. For example, over 3,000 U.S. congregations host education programs for young children, including preschool and weekday schools, after-school programs, and tutoring. And still other congregations provide scholarships and supplies to their local schools. Globally, Presbyterian partners in Africa alone manage over 6,000 primary and secondary schools. So as Presbyterians globally, it's what we do. And this international goal of sustainable development is proposing ensuring inclusive and equitable quality education and promoting lifelong learning opportunities for all. Well, tremendous progress has been made in education since the beginning of this millennium. The number of out-of-school children globally has decreased from 106 million to 58 million. And 2/3 more children were enrolled in primary school than before, and gender parity has also improved. But this progress has been uneven, and the remaining challenges disproportionately affect the most marginalized populations. They include poor children, those who live in rural areas, or in areas that are affected by conflict, and children who are in sub-Saharan Africa and parts of Asia. There is a global education crisis, a global learning crisis. Classrooms are crowded. There are too few classrooms. There's a shortage of qualified teachers, especially female teachers in rural areas. There's also a large gap in education access and attainment that maintains the inequality between and within countries. So there's much to be done. Well, here in the States is back to school time, and this campaign also focuses on U.S. public education. And to tell us more about the domestic part of the education campaign, I'd like to introduce Reverend Alonzo Johnson.
Hi, I am Reverend Alonzo Johnson. I am the convener of the Educated Child Transform the World Initiative Domestic. And as Frank mentioned, much of our focus is really addressing poverty alleviation and advocacy for children. Presbyterians, we've all, as Frank mentions, we've always had a strong history in being engaged. We've also had a strong history in education. And much of what we are seeking to do on this side, as Frank mentions, we have very similar issues with poverty here in the States. Poverty hurts. And by age 4, poor children have heard 30 million fewer words than well-off children. 1 in 5 children live in poverty. So what we're aiming to do on the domestic end is to strengthen communities' capacity to provide quality education, to elevate the quantity and quality of early childhood programs offered by and in Presbyterian congregations. We want to really lift up those congregations that are doing incredible work in the area of education. We have a mechanism in which to do that. One is our website, to just uphold those congregations that are being intentional about addressing issues as they pertain to poverty and educational access. We also want to give voice to national public policy debates about educational issues and elevate and encourage the replication of best congregationally based strategies. Children constitute the most poverty-stricken age group in the country, and one of the things that we are looking to do is to address that. And as Presbyterian people, as we often say that education is in our DNA, and if that is indeed the case, then we must act. And from the domestic end of things, we can act together. And so my information is on the screen, and we are looking forward to being able to engage with churches and to walk together and figuring out how can we address issues of child poverty and educational access for all young people in our community.
Thanks so much, Alonzo. And we know that education transforms lives. It transformed Nelson Mandela and provided him with a vision for the future of South Africa and a gateway out of poverty. It's also a good investment. Experts estimate that there's a 10-to-1 return on investment in education. It helps to break down the walls that divide us, and it's crucial to peace building and strengthening both individual and community resilience. It helps us to know each other. It also helps us to address the inequalities that often generate conflict. So what are some of the objectives of the education campaign globally? Well, a priority objective for the U.S. and the global parts of the campaign is to develop and strengthen early childhood education and development. Numerous studies have shown that the period between birth and 6 years is extremely important in cognitive and social development and is directly related with school performance and completion. One of the ways in which a congregation might get involved is through a partnering between your weekday school and a preschool of a global partner. This slide shows a potential partnership that's developing between a Presbyterian weekday school in North Carolina and a preschool in rural Ethiopia. Quality education depends on quality teaching. A second objective of the campaign focuses on teacher training and mentoring. Teachers who are professionally trained and resourced to encourage learning. We want no teacher to be left behind. Programs such as these are taking place in South Sudan, in Bangladesh, and in Guatemala. It's a challenge to place and retain qualified teachers, especially in rural areas that have few resources. One incentive that we're looking at is cross-training teachers in areas such as health or counseling and providing continuing professional development for teachers. And here in the U.S., There are teacher mentors that are providing help to new teachers with support from Presbyterian congregations. It will be our pleasure to hear from Judy Nebrig in Asheville, North Carolina, about the education partnership between the Presbytery of Western North Carolina and two presbyteries and many congregations in Guatemala. Judy's in the photo at the top left, on the front row on the right side. Judy, welcome.
Western North Carolina's partnership with two presbyteries in Guatemala began with the signing of the first 5-year covenant in 1994. We've renewed the covenant every 5 years, and we've been focusing on the priorities that we decided upon together and that we review in annual face-to-face meetings each year. And these priorities have included health, education, pastoral support, youth, and women's ministries. In this moment, I'd like to focus on the priority of education. These efforts began with supporting adult theological education, and then we added secular education for children. Children's education support has happened through church-to-church partnerships, which are at the heart of our partnership. For some years, churches have given money for scholarships for individual children in churches and in their communities, over 700 so far. As that program went along, we began wondering about the quality of the education these children were receiving. As we thought about this with our partners, we decided together that we needed more information about what was actually happening in Guatemala's educational system. So, in 2013, a group of 8 educators, 4 from Guatemala and 4 from North Carolina, traveled together, guided by an experienced educational consultant, to hear about this situation in Guatemala. We used our new learnings to draft a plan of actions for our future work together in the area of education. The travel study group became the initial members of the education committee of the 3 presbyteries that was established. The plan of actions has been approved by all 3 presbyteries and is gradually being implemented. The 3 foci of this are improved scholarship and education programs, teacher formation, and advocacy for education and human rights. In one of our partner presbyteries now, we're supporting a collaboration that we discovered last year in a local community. In this community, school administrators, a district supervisor, and people from other agencies in the community met together. Their main objective is to increase the percentage of children passing first grade. It had been less than 50%. And they're developing an integrated model that includes teacher formation, health and nutrition services, and other means to realize educational improvements. Our partnership is presently supporting a specific program in one of the schools in that community called Libros para Niños, Books for Children, and it provides school libraries and teacher formation. Soon, some of us will be back in Guatemala again to think with our partners about the idea of developing community libraries, hopefully nested in community health centers. Our hope is that these libraries would have local coordinators who are trained to work with children directly and also with parents, especially those with very young children. These coordinators would help parents to gain skills in reading to their children in ways that help them love books and reading. We try to take every step in this and other aspects of our partnership alongside each other, Guatemalans and Carolinians. One of the hardest things to actually do consistently and effectively is to keep in touch and move forward together. And this is true not only with our partners in Guatemala, but also with all the churches in our presbytery here in Western North Carolina. With our partners in Guatemala, we're finding Facebook to be particularly effective. Here in Western North Carolina, we work through a church-to-church committee, email, and a Facebook group. Our partnership email address is on your screen, and Marie will forward mail to the appropriate person and copy other appropriate people. We would love to share ideas and resources with others walking this sacred ground of partnership. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Judy. And this is one great example of a Presbytery partnership. And there are other education partnerships between country mission networks, between Presbyterian partners in Congo, in Malawi, and in South Sudan, among others. So please consider how your presbytery or mission network can work together to have an impact on education quality. Another key objective of the campaign is to keep girls and boys in school. The futures of these kids will be brighter if they can stay in school. They're less likely to engage in risky behavior or dangerous work or get married at an early age if they can stay in school. This is a priority objective of the U.S. part of the education campaign as well, as we know the school dropout rate must be reversed. All children need a healthy and safe school environment with access to proper latrines, especially for adolescent girls, and hand washing facilities at all schools. This is a priority with several of our Presbyterian partners. The path to and from school should be clear and safe and not too long, and when necessary, parents can volunteer to escort the children. Presbyterian partners in Malawi are providing toilets for girls to enable them to remain in school throughout the month without embarrassment. Parents are the primary stakeholders in their children's education, giving their money for school fees and supplies and sacrificing the time that children can help with chores or working to support the household. Sacrifices and understanding the value of education are essential. So working with parents and teachers, with the schools and local communities are very important. Presbyterian partners are reaching out to the least of these, the most vulnerable children, children with special needs of all types. For example, those in Malawi who are receiving education in spite of hearing, vision, or physical challenges. More than 30 million children globally are either displaced or are refugees due to violence or natural disasters. They are also special needs children, and continuing their education is critical. Imagine the challenges of language, culture, and curriculum that must be overcome, not to mention the dangers of migrating across international borders. Education is an important psychosocial intervention. It can provide a safe and stable environment for children, offering structure and building resilience. Today, some 230 million children live in areas and countries that are affected by armed conflict, and 34 million of these children are out of school. Currently, we're looking at ways to assist the Synod of Syria and Lebanon to provide educational opportunities for refugee children. Ethnic and linguistic minority groups are often marginalized, and their children are often also left behind when accessing education. This Presbyterian partner school in Thailand, near the border with Burma, offers learning opportunities for children beyond the 6th grade, helping them to turn their dreams into reality. And there are other ways to support this campaign: giving to scholarship committees to provide continuing education for teachers and tuition assistance for vulnerable children, advocacy at all levels here in the U.S. and with our global partners to support funding for education, volunteering and supporting local public school boards and schools in your area. These are all very important ways in which you can be involved. And I'd like to introduce you to some of the amazing mission co-workers who are engaged in education with global partners in Africa, in Asia, and in Eastern Europe. They include teachers, mentors, administrators, and others. And we are happy to be able to connect you with any of them so that you can get to know them and support them in their challenging work. Well, I hope that you can take some time to reflect on what you've seen and heard during this webinar. Look at the big picture, but also consider how you can be involved. Pray. Pray for our Presbyterian partners globally and also here in the U.S., for mission personnel and staff who are involved in the campaign. Give. Financially give to the campaign. Gifts can be made at that site that's on your screen. And for more information, access the Global Poverty site. And connect with the campaign by joining the Facebook group or following the blog. Feel free to contact me via email or call and share your ideas. We'd love to take some time that's remaining to answer any questions that you may have or comments that you may have thought of during this webinar. But please do be in touch, remain engaged with us in trying to provide quality education for children here in this country and around the world. Thank you.
Thanks, Frank. So this is Christine again, and I'm going to just read some of the questions that have come in, but please feel free to continue submitting your questions, and we'll try to make sure we have time to get to all of them. One of the first questions that came in has to do with partnership. I think it said, how would something like a partnership even get started? How would we even know who to connect with? So I think, Frank, probably you have some things to say about that, but I would also like to say that the Office of Equipping for Mission Involvement is deeply involved in helping connect churches or presbyteries with potential partners around the world. Partnership is not something that you just jump into without a lot of discernment and thoughtful preparation, and we have some great resources in our office to help connect you with our mission coworkers who can specifically help you think about starting a partnership in a certain part of the world. So you can feel free to be in touch with us in our Equipping for Mission Involvement office, or you can be in touch with Frank also. And Frank, would you like to add anything about starting a partnership, and specifically a partnership that might have to do with education campaigns?
Thanks, Christine. I put up the slide of the mission resources that are available, as Christine was talking about. There are some wonderful examples of presbytery partnerships and mission network partnerships that have special education foci, and we're happy to share their experiences and put you in touch with them. There are also congregational partnerships that have been started with congregational partners overseas as well as primary schools. And there's a lot of lessons that I think we can learn from how these partnerships have evolved, and I would be happy to receive your specific questions around that. I think probably the best place to get started is through the Equipping for Mission Involvement site that's there on your screen, and you can direct your questions specifically around education to me, and I would be glad to respond with those in detail.
Great. I think adding a good follow-up to that question is one that I think, Judy, you might be able to respond to well. So the question is it's exciting to hear all that you have been able to do with your presbytery, Judy. Can you tell us a bit about how this group got started and why this group chose to work on education as a part of its partnership?
When you refer to this group, do you mean the group of people here and in Guatemala?
I think they're referring to the Presbytery leadership team. Is that
okay?
Your group?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Before 1994, the Presbytery itself decided that it really would enhance its life and the life of the church in the world to be in partnership. And at that time, in 1994, the contact was made with a person at PCUSA, Homer Rickenbaugh, who that was his job, was to make matches. So the PCUSA would get requests from churches or presbyteries in different places, and then he would also get requests from people like us, and that is where the match was made. We wanted it to be a place that was it was reasonable to travel to, which is why they chose Central America. And so it was through assistance, just like you're suggesting now, but the assistance was different then from PCUSA.
Great. Okay, well, thank you, Judy, for telling us a bit about that. One question that came in was just about how do our partners determine what quality is? How do we define quality? So is there a standard curriculum that they must use? Frank, can you tell us a bit about that?
Yeah, measuring quality has been a challenge, I think, for education specialists globally. How do you measure impact, and how do you assess learning? I think it's widely understood to be a challenge that that both UNESCO, the UN agency, and Brookings Institution here in the U.S. are focused on with their early learning or learning initiatives metrics task force, and they have identified about 7 domains that they're trying to develop metrics for, so that quality education can be measured and standardized, actually, internationally. But these are mostly done historically through achievement tests of reading and numeracy, and we're trying to improve on that and work with our partners to ensure that teachers are trained and upgraded to their professional capacity, and that resources are also available, so that we provide the best learning environment that we can for the children. There's a whole lot more that could be said around measuring quality education, and maybe we'll do a separate webinar even on that very topic, but it is a priority of the next Sustainable Development Goals. I think it's goal number 4. We'll be looking at providing inclusive quality education, not just getting kids in a classroom. Enrollment has increased tremendously since free education for all children, but the quality has actually deteriorated because classrooms are overcrowded, there are not enough teachers, etc. So we're now focused more on quality, making sure that children are learning at the appropriate rate, and so that they're learning beyond just the academics, if you will, but learning social skills and life skills that will provide them as they grow into adulthood.
Great. Thank you, Frank. Another question that came in that I think, Alonzo, you might be able to help us out with a little bit, has to do with advocacy. For churches that may not feel like they have a capacity to start a partnership internationally, or that might just want to focus more on domestic education, are there specific ways that they might be able to get involved in advocacy? Yeah, that's the question. Do you have any?
Absolutely.
Great.
Yes, I do. One of the great things about our staff team on the domestic end of things is that we have Reverend Dr. J. Herbert Nelson, who is the director of the Office of Witness. And Herbert and I, we've been working a lot on how do we address some of these educational issues from an advocacy perspective. So with that, there are all types of ways that folks can get involved. One is to look at some of the issues and even call the Office of Public Witness and ask, what are some of the educational issues that we're dealing with? And I think with that, we will find some of those issues that are basically preventing young people from living lives of self-determination. I would also suggest with us, we have been working closely with the Children's Defense Fund and some folks there. And with the CDF, also tons of ideas and suggestions on how people can get involved from an advocacy perspective. What we usually like to say to folks is that even if your church does not have children in it, there are still ways that you can advocate for children and connect with other congregations or presbyteries or again the mentioned organizations that would be able to steer us to some of the issues that are affecting young people. Of course, as we are looking at the political landscape, the upcoming election and the debates around immigration, we have also been talking about issues concerning immigration and mass incarceration. So we definitely would advise folks from a advocacy perspective to be looking at issues like mass incarceration, school to prison pipeline, where three times as many racial ethnic young people are likely to be thrown out of school and end up in prison than white children. And so there are tons of advocacy issues around that, tons of advocacy issues around immigrant detention and education, bilingual education. So we would like to really steer folks toward those resources, and they are welcome to contact us. We have the information that was on the screen. We have a website. I will be more than happy to receive calls and help folks out in getting a sense of where they can start with some of the issues that they might be interested in, or the issues that are closer to their hearts. But we are definitely, direct action and advocacy are two of the most important aspects of being involved in this initiative.
Great, thank you, Alonzo. Frank, I didn't know if you might want to add anything from an international perspective regarding advocacy.
Yes, Christine, I think we've got several global partners that are struggling to try and advocate for an increased budget line for education, certainly for paying teachers and providing resources for classrooms. One of the key areas, one of the countries that we're working with is Congo, the Democratic Republic of Congo, where we know that the country is rich in natural resources, and we're advocating together with our partners and others to try and increase the percentage of that revenue that can be that can help to resource education and health in that country, because the people are in such dire need. So there are ways in which we can speak with our congressional contacts here in this country to put pressure on foreign governments to consider a higher budget allocation towards education and healthcare and the essentials.
Great. I would just add that I know a lot of us in World Mission are really fortunate to be connected with some of our mission networks that have been mentioned throughout this presentation. And if you don't know about mission networks, they are groups that gather together. They usually are connected through a particular part of the world, having partnerships with a particular part of the world. And so, we have over 30 mission networks that have Presbyterian churches and presbyteries coming together to talk about how their partnerships work and talk about how to strengthen them. And out of those mission networks, some really exciting advocacy efforts have come about. And it's just, I think, a testimony to the power of getting Presbyterians together and talking. And we have our wonderful individual congregations, and when we live into our connectional system and realize how much good can be done when we're together, advocacy is just one of those places where that really shines. And so consider getting connected with a mission network if you do have a partnership already, or if something like education is something that you're really interested in, contact Frank and know that this campaign is about building those connections so that we can have greater impact as we work together than we might have if we just stuck to our own individual communities. So I would just add that piece as well. when it comes to advocacy.
Thank you, Christine. That reminds me of the communities of mission practice that we often talk about as a framework for our work in world mission, working together in partnership with our global partners, with U.S. Presbyterians and with Peace U.S.A. World Mission to have a collective impact around addressing the three critical global issues and assisting our global partners with their priority needs. So it's very important. I think we can do better together and do better collectively, and so there's a lot of information that can be shared there. So the networks that you've mentioned, for example, the Sudan Mission Network has an advocacy group that stays quite well informed and is often networking with U.S. congressional representatives and others around issues that affect our South Sudanese partners.
Great. Again, if you want any more information on things like that, you can look at the page that is on your screen right now, get information there, or contact Frank, and we're eager to help connect you in that regard. We have one more question, unless someone wants to submit some others. So I'll read this question that has come in. It's from Charles. He says, for the past 4 or 5 years, I have supported students in the Philippines in college and schools, and 2 of the students have graduated. Is there a way to integrate this kind of mission work into the work that you're talking about, Frank and Alonzo? Is there a way that that those 2 kinds of efforts can work together? And he's asking because he feels like that kind of support has been successful for the individuals, and he would like to be able to see that grow. Frank, would you have any response to that?
Sure. First, Charles, let me thank you for your support for those children and young people that you've given aid to so that they can get their education. Scholarships are very important. I think we've learned a lot of lessons over the years about how to implement a scholarship program, the need to have continuity and to be able to continue supporting education up through higher education. And many of our networks and our area coordinators here in World Mission are in touch with global partners in the Philippines and throughout Asia and Africa, Latin America, and the Middle East and Eastern Europe, who can connect you with those opportunities to continue scholarship support. Many of our partner churches have
Frank, are you there? I think we may have lost connection with Frank, unfortunately. So, Alonzo, unless you had anything you wanted to add to that, we might just move on. We're having some technical difficulties with our sound, and so...
Yeah, I lost contact with you all for a few. Yeah.
Okay, I'm not sure what we lost there, but I just wanted to say thank you to Charles for helping support those young people that you have in the Philippines to get their education. I think it's a very important thing, a role that we can play being blessed here in the United States with the resources to help others around the world who otherwise would not have an education. So scholarships, sponsorships like that are very important. I think we've been doing it to various degrees at various levels over many years and can help with some lessons learned in providing scholarships and make some connections so that that can be continued and we can grow that, that role for U.S. Presbyterians. Thanks.
I'm not sure if this helps at all, and I might have missed some of the question, but I think I get the gist. One of the things, and I'm not sure if this is helpful for Charles, but one of the things that we have been looking at the in the domestic aspect of this initiative is, you know, what are churches? We are finding churches that are doing both, that are, you know, focusing on both national and international work in education. One of the things that I find really fascinating is when we find those churches and those ministries that where young people are engaging in helping other young people. So in other words, young people nationally are doing efforts to help young people internationally. So we are looking for these particular types of vignettes and these churches who are doing these kinds of things to connect those young people, and so for several reasons, because we think that it's education in and of itself when this happens for both young people here and abroad. And so one of the things that we've been looking at is how do we get churches to connect with both aspects of national and international, and how do we encourage churches who have young people to be engaged in that work. And that's something that's really important for us as we are continuing to help our young people in the United States be more aware of the larger issues and larger implications, and so that they can join the struggle with those children overseas.
Great, thank you, Alonzo. You know, one thing that was submitted also was just the suggestion of connecting with some of our mission coworkers in that area. You know, we have mission coworkers who have worked in the Philippines for years and who are very well connected with our global partners there or really anywhere else around the world. And our mission coworkers are just a real gift to help us connect. Connect with, they could be helpful to your congregation, Charles, or to anyone's congregation who wants to have both that personal connection that's so important, but also a connection with the church that's in place there, our global partners who are at work there. So that might be one step that you could look at is connecting with one of our mission coworkers who work in the area. Well, that is the end of our question and answer. Frank, did you have anything additional that you wanted to say before I close us out?
Well, thanks, Christine. Let me just say thank you to everybody who has tuned into this webinar, and I hope that it's the first webinar on education that we'll have. There could be many others to look at areas such as early childhood development or teacher training, some other specific areas within education, and some other examples of how our partners are engaged in education. But I know that this is an area that many Presbyterians have a passion about and a lot of history in. There's a lot of involvement, a lot of Presbyterian teachers out there, and we need your help. We need you to engage with us in this campaign, both domestically and internationally, and help us to provide some technical assistance, financial resources, and others to work with our partners, both here in the U.S. and around the world, to try and strengthen quality education. We'd be interested in your experiences, if you've had a partnership or been involved in a partnership in a specific country. If you have a career as an educator and would like to participate with us, please be in touch and help us to further grow this campaign so that we are able to provide quality education to 1 million children before the end of the decade. Thanks, Christine, for coordinating this, and we look forward to correspondence and further connections with those of you who are listening.
Thank you so much, Frank and Alonzo and Judy, for sharing about the important work that each of you is engaged in regards to these campaigns. This has really been helpful, and I hope it's been helpful to you all who've been able to join us. Please remember, you have this screen in front of you. Remember that this is one of many resources that we offer in the Equipping for Mission Involvement office to help your congregation or your presbytery or your mission group connect in meaningful ways in your mission efforts. So we hope that you'll go to that mission resources page and find some really great tools that you can use. We also want to let you know about a conference that is going to be happening November 19th through the 21st this fall that is specifically for mission leaders who might be looking for a chance to connect with other mission leaders around the country, to gain good tools to take back home to make your mission efforts more effective, more faithful, just add some energy to the mission work that you engage in. We have some great speakers who are going to be leading us in this Mission Magnified conference. We're going to take a look at short-term mission trips, how you plan them well, and also take a look at how you can find a mission focus in your mission efforts and have great time for worship and community building and small groups. It's just going to be a meaningful experience, and we hope that you'll consider attending. I want to let you know that next month's World Mission Today webinar is going to be a little new. We're going to try out some roundtable conversations. So instead of just hearing from us, we want to be able to have conversation with all of you who engage in such meaningful mission work in your congregations and presbyteries and communities. So next month's topic is going to be on partnership, which is great following this presentation where we've talked so much about the power of partnership. We want to have a chance to talk with all of you about partnership, whether you've had a long-term partnership or whether it's something you're just considering starting in your congregation. We'll send out tomorrow a follow-up email to all of you, and if you're interested in participating, we'll hope you'll let us know, and that way we can schedule these conversations according to what will work best for you. So please be on the lookout for that email. Thank you again for joining us today. Thank you for your prayer and your effort and your passion for God's mission in the world. We hope this has been helpful, and we hope that you'll participate with us again next month. Take care and go in peace. Thanks.